For this episode, I'm very excited because we are talking about a topic that it just isn't discussed enough, and that is men's mental health. And joining us today, we have got Francis and Kevin on the sofa, on the Acon sofa.
It's a bit small.
It's a little bit snug, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sorry guys.
It was very cosy.
But it's good to have you both in as well. It's nice to have you so we can have a proper chat face to face. Do you just want to introduce yourself to our listeners first? Francis?
Yeah, hello, I'm Francis. I'm 37 years old. And unfortunately, and I'm a conveyancer. I work for a firm called Wilford Smith in Sheffield.
Perfect. Kevin?
Yes, I'm Kevin Gilbert. I work at Acon. I'm a director and licensed conveyancer. I'm not going to tell you my age. Just keep that one under wraps.
We'll keep that one under wraps.
Failed there with that.
Yeah. Just keep it under wraps. Right, we're going to jump straight in because I feel like, we just were having a chat before and we basically chatted as though it was a podcast. There was so much. There was so much good content, but there is so much to talk about with this topic. Number one, we want to talk about men's mental health, especially when it comes to stress and how men cope with and react to stress in the world of conveyancing, because it is a stressful job, and we'll dive into that. But we're also going to talk a little bit about men's mental health and stress just in general, and do men talk about it? Do you want to just give a little bit of an overview, Francis, of what you do day to day? And I'd love to know as well, on top of that, do you find your job stressful?
Well, first of all, I just deal with transactions, sales, purchases, remortgages, leaseholds, new builds, unregistered property, just basically getting my clients from start to finish through their customer journey, hopefully in a quick as timescale as we possibly can. Mm-hmm. Is it stressful? Yes. Always. Obviously, the more jobs you have on, the more stressful it gets, because obviously the more people that you're dealing with, you've got agents, clients, brokers. The other side, sometimes their client then decides to sometimes start necking in on stuff where they really shouldn't be. But yeah, just with the sheer volume of people that we're dealing with, and the fact that in conveyancing, the onus is on us in relation to absolutely everything. It's not just a case of moving people from A to B. It's a case of satisfying lenders, searches, all manner of things that I don't think, well, I know that clients don't quite realise sometimes. They just think it's a lot simpler than it is.
What do you enjoy about the job?
It's going to be a really long. It's going to be a really long list.
I know. This is. I think the thing I enjoy about the job about the most is getting the job done. When you finally call a client and you're just like, we've completed, you can go and get your keys, jobbed, client's happy. And I think the second thing I enjoy most about my job is being alone to crack on, left alone to crack on. So not during work hours. I find I enjoy my job the most outside of work hours.
Why is that?
Because you just get to focus on the actual job. You find that during the day, you've got so many people, as I said just before, the volume of different people calling you, wanting stuff, things you need to apply for, people you need to call, people you need to email, respond to, angry people.
You are not left alone.
Yeah.
Between the hours of 9 to 5.
Yeah, you're not left alone. Even outside those hours, you're not.
Yeah.
But, it's just a lot easier out of hours, I find.
So it's like a non-stop role, and then on top of that, it's because you are literally dealing with so many different people, so many different people's wants, needs, so many different emotions attached to it as well. We'll come back to that in a minute. Kevin, would you like to talk a little bit about your role? Because you're a director, so obviously you do the conveyancing role, but then you manage a team as well.
Yeah, so exactly like Francis, day to day conveyancing, getting people moved as quickly as possible, and as best we can really. But then on top of that, trying to run a team, run an office, help look after the company, and people's livelihoods are in the management team's hands. So the stress of making sure jobs are coming in, quotes are being given, complaints are kept to a minimum. Touch wood, they still are for us, so that's good. It's dealing with angry clients or staffing issues. Not all staff get on, and it's like day to day, every day is different. And you're coming in and you're like, oh, what am I going to be hit with today? It's like, oh, great, lovely day. Roll on 5 o'clock. Get the wine on. That's about it.
1 minute past 9.
Yeah. Oh, God, yeah. Go for a coffee.
In your team, Kevin, what's the ratio of male to female?
Okay, so in the office I'm based in, there are there's 16 of us, 2 men. The rest are all female. And across the company, I think we're into mid-60s on staff numbers, and there are 3 or 4 men.
Really?
Yeah.
Francis, what about you at work?
Wherever I've worked, I'll have to concur. It's mainly a female-dominated industry, 100%. Very few men.
Why do you think that is?
I've always thought just because women deal with other people a lot better, they're a lot more. I find that they're a lot more organised as well, and organisation is key in conveyancing. And having the having the empathy to deal with quite often disgruntled people asking questions about something that sometimes they may never have done before. If it's the first time moving house, they're not going to understand certain things, and when we push back on their wants, even just from listening to some, I've picked up a lot from some of the women in the industry that I've worked with, a lot, just purely from how they speak to clients. Sometimes I'd speak to a client, and when I first started out, and looking back now, I think that was probably not the way to deal with it. And I find that the women in the industry tend to have offered me sort of a great deal more scope in how I deal with customers, and I feel that that's why that is the case. I just think they just tend to deal with it better, or they're just gluttons for punishment. Either one of the two, but yeah.
Is it more then because like conveyancing throws up like difficult conversations that have to be had? Is that what you mean? Is that where the empathy is needed?
I think so. Anything can pop up at any time, and just dealing with just general. I think men can tend to be very blunt in how we go about explaining things.
Very black and white.
Sometimes. And sometimes I feel that we sometimes don't offer as many options as me. I'm just using myself as an example when I'm comparing myself to my female counterparts. They will say things that they will suggest things, or maybe have an idea that I just simply wouldn't have thought of. I don't know if it's because I'm a man or whether I'm incompetent. It might be the latter. I don't know. But that's just what I tend to have found.
Do you think that translates to just life in general? So with you and saying like your friendship circles, like with other blokes and stuff, do you feel like, so where you say like if you're more blunt and direct, if you're male to male or even male to female, just in life in general outside of conveyancing, do you think that then translates?
I definitely am. I'm always being told you're too blunt, you're too black and white. And I'm like, there's no grey area. My wife, my family, my sisters, my mom, they're all like, you've just got no filter. It's either right or wrong. There's one of those, and that's just the way I've always been. And that is a fault of mine. I know that I should probably be a bit more sympathetic or empathetic in certain situations and come across in different ways. And it's never, whatever I do, it's never been out of malice or to hurt anybody. It's just, that's what I'm thinking. There you go. I've moved on from it. Whereas then that would upset somebody and they'll dwell on it and they'll think about it, and it all comes back in the end. So I know it definitely, it's not just work, it's in my personal life as well. So.
Yeah. And I think not talking about men generally, but for me, like the men that I've got in my life, that is a real common thing. How about you, Francis? Would you agree?
Yeah, and I don't know. Is it a bad thing? I don't know. I just feel that when you're telling somebody something, you tell them how it is.
Yeah. There's none of that sort of games. There's none of that. I'm saying this, but I actually mean that. Yeah, it's just, I'm telling you this. That's exactly what I mean.
And these are the options, and this is how you deal with it. And I just feel that sometimes I feel that. Well, in relation to work, and sometimes with life in general, sometimes if you tell somebody what the situation is, and then you can then sort of move on from it, or plan or make sort of any sort of alterations or suggestions that you need to do.
Well, if men are more direct, linking it back to, you know, stress and mental health, would you say that men talk to other men about mental health, about stress, or if anything stressful were to go on in life, or even stresses at work? Do men talk?
No.
No, straight away, no.
Just a definitive.
Yeah, I don't think it is. I've been involved in team sports most of my life, and I've got a good group of close-knit friends as well, and I can honestly say probably had a deep and meaningful conversation a couple of times, a handful of times with those friends over that life, I think. And usually that's at like 1 o'clock of the morning, absolutely drunk or something. You know, I don't think it's anything we do on purpose. It's just, like I was saying, you know, you turn up at football or rugby or golf for it. How are you? How are you doing?
Just
and it's sort of, oh yeah, I'm fine. Yeah, it's great. Oh, should we crack on then? And it's like, you don't go into detail and you don't ever ask those questions.
But what about when because you were talking about if you're going to like play a sport or something, there's a distraction so you don't have to talk. What about, and I always say this to my other half, Matt, I'm like, when you and the lads go out for drinks and you're out for hours, what do you talk about?
All sorts of stuff, football, everything
I don't think we can talk about that on
everything
this.
Other than what's wrong
emotions,
with us. Yeah, I'd say everything, like,
I think, there's a couple of friends, a couple of close friends where, if they're really in trouble, they will speak. And like I say, we've had those conversations, and me myself, I would, if I got to that point where I'd need to, I would. But
but it's awkward as hell.
It is awkward, It's sort of like you're building yourself up. I need to talk to you about this. And you're
why is it awkward?
I don't know. I genuinely don't know. I've got a good...
I think it's because you're opening yourself up.
Yeah.
You know, it's very emotional. You're sort of telling somebody else, laying yourself bare almost. You
feel vulnerable.
Yeah. Like you've got a problem or you've got an issue, you don't know how to fix it. And I think the view on men is that you should be able to fix everything. You know, you're a man. It's sort of...
It's just part of the course.
Yeah. Man up or don't be a girl or whatever. It's sort of, come on, sort yourself out.
What? So, because you were going to say when it feels like awkward. So, in the sense that, do you say you had something going on?
Yeah.
Would you feel uncomfortable, even with one of your best mates, like having that conversation or talking to them about it?
I probably would only speak to maybe a couple of specific people. One of which, I know we were talking earlier, is a girl, and the reason I would speak to her about this is because I never used to speak to anyone about anything. I used to find it dead strange. I remember when I came to uni and you'd sit around tables and some people would just generally just chat about in their life. I'd be like, whoa, why are you talking about this?
Really?
Like Jen, I'd be like, why are you actually talking about this? And then, so I'd never talk about anything and people would ask me questions. And eventually I met this girl where I started working in conveyancing. I'll name drop Nicola Hemming. So you're on this podcast.
I hope you're listening, Nicola. Shout out.
She used to ask me stuff every day. She used to do my editing.
About what?
Just my life.
What you're up to.
Just like what I'm up to. Nothing majorly personal. But I just didn't want to tell her because I just didn't talk about stuff.
Just because you didn't want to? Or?
No, I just didn't feel like, why is it any of your business? I was sort of, it's not your business type thing. And I don't talk. If you want to tell me your problems, happy days. We'll have a discussion, and I'll give you some sage advice. But
that's
when
interesting, though.
Comes the other way, I don't want to do it. And then it got to the point where eventually one day she asked me a question, and I gave her an answer, and the world didn't fall to pieces. So I was like, oh, actually, it's not that bad. So like now, if there was actually anything, like she'd be my go-to because. Yeah, she was the one that actually just got me to just generally start talking, not about anything. Not even mental health issues, just general stuff that's just normal to talk about.
And Kevin, you mentioned earlier something about like if you were to speak to someone about it, there'd be like this man up thing.
Yeah.
Where does that come from? What does that mean?
I have no idea. I couldn't help you. I have no idea where that comes from. I think it's one of those sayings that you pick up on, and you know when you're younger, growing up and everything, it's sort of it's just been passed down from generations. It's it's like you don't cry, boys don't cry, or men don't cry. It's one of it's sort of that same sort of thing, and it's everywhere. And it's interesting because I think there's actually a men's mental health charity called Man Up. and they're trying to change the wording, and they're trying to do loads. But I couldn't tell you where it come from, but I can tell you it's used. Especially growing up when you're younger, and especially earlier on in life. Yeah.
And do you still even because obviously the awareness of mental health, there's charities like Man Up where there's a real focus on men's mental health and that awareness and encouraging men to speak up. But do you still, if something were going on in your life, or if you were feeling really stressed at work, or something from a mental health perspective, or say something happened in your family, would you have that worry that, oh my God, what if I'm going to be judged, or what if that bloke that I'm speaking to is going to be thinking, mate, man up, come on?
Not so much, but I'm going to cat amongst the pigeons it a bit. Sometimes I don't think there's a problem with man up sometimes, because I do feel that sometimes, I'll clarify what I mean. So sometimes some people say you shouldn't say that, but then sometimes you need to look at the severity of what you're talking about, because I think sometimes people do place emphasis on things that sometimes aren't actually, in the general whole scheme of things, that problematic. And I think if you're willing to let yourself wallow over something that is relatively insignificant, when something big does come along.
But does that go down to the empathy side of things, because you're not putting yourself in their shoes to see what matters to them might not matter to you?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, that's fair. That's fair comment. Yeah. I'd agree with that, because I'd like you say, I would only.
I get you. Sometimes political correctness and all that sort of stuff, it's gone mad. But at the same time,
I suppose in that case, I'd say for me, then in that case, that's how it falls. I just think that some things are just is this problem still going to be here in 6 months' time? If the answer's no.
I'm the same. I'll be if I'm going for anything, don't get me wrong, I've got a couple of friends that I will talk to if I need to, but half the time I'm sat there on my own thinking, do I need to tell anything? I can sort this out myself. And I try and look at the good things before I concentrate on that bad issue, and I'm like, what can I do to fix that? And it's only if I'm in real dire straits, which would, I've not had too many of those, I don't have to sort it out.
And I think that's probably what you were getting at, Francis. If it's a matter that isn't related to mental health, stress, something that is, you're going to need that attention and someone to be there for you and support you, but that's where.
I'd say so. And sometimes people draw on mental health when sometimes it might not actually be a mental health issue.
Yeah.
So, but again, like you say, it's all subjective. Yeah. It depends on the person and the individual.
So bringing it back to the work environment as well, you were both talking about your jobs come with pretty much constant stress, you're never really off the hook. Would you say that male and female employees react and cope differently with stress at work?
I don't know. I think everybody's different, so they all have. I think if you ask the females, I think you'd get different answers from all of them.
Love that.
I think everybody's completely different, especially stepping up and looking after a team and then an office and everything, and looking after people. You realise that there is no hard and fast rule for dealing with people. Everyone's different, so everyone reacts to things completely differently and not how you would expect them to. So you have to sort of cater to that, how you will talk to somebody, what work you can give them, and there's various different things. But it's a big eye opener.
Yeah.
When you step up.
What about you, Francis?
I'd say, in a previous role, I ran a remortgage team, and I just have to echo what you said. It's honestly, people respond. Some people deal with it magnificently. Some people just fall to bits, and each individual person responds completely differently to different situations. So that guy or that woman who might act in a completely calm, controlling manner in one instance might freak out at something else.
Something very irrational.
And it'll be, and because obviously we've had the experience, if it's somebody that's sort of new to the game, where where they're freaking out, and it's just something where it's just chill. You don't need to worry about that. And then you can just control. And it's all part of the learning curve. But I think as a manager, you have to understand different personalities and how they do respond to different situations. Like me personally, as far as work stress is concerned, I think when I get squeezed, I focus. Some people don't do that. Some people, And I think that's where you find that's where people find whether or not conveyancing is their thing. When it gets too stressful, if they fold, then they probably realise at that point that it's probably not for them.
It's interesting what you said, because there's reports out there, or when reports are done on how, especially in the legal world, solicitors or anyone that in the legal profession copes with stress, they kind of hone in on how do men and women cope differently. But it's amazing that you two have both said, actually, it's not about whether you are a man or a woman. It is literally based on a personality thing. And I guess as a leader, that is something that you've got to be empathetic towards, isn't it, and think about. So there's always been like these old school male attitudes of the just grin and bear it. Sit.
I think we're old,
right?
Old
Yeah.
school. Not saying that you're old. However, there's been these old school attitudes of just grin and bear it.
Yeah.
Do you think that still features in the legal profession in conveyancing, or the legal profession in general, maybe?
I would say so. I think you've got a long way to go before that will change, I think, because I think that the whole attitude in the workplace around workloads and billing targets and that type of thing, it's going to take time. I think we need to educate the younger people that it's okay, to have a different mindset towards mental health and stresses and everything like that. And that's going to take time for them to get into positions of power within the legal firms. I think law firms currently, they might play lip service. They might say, oh yeah, we want to look after our staff. But then they're saying one thing, but their actions are doing something completely different. They're giving their staff 150, 200, 300 files to look after. They're setting them impossible targets. To hit. And that's putting loads of stress on the staff. But so I don't think you're going to get a massive change quickly. I think it's going to take years to overcome, and that's by, more campaigns, by the charities, youngest managers and directors coming through and trying to implement change and make things differently. But at the minute, I'd say it's very much in a lot of firms, not everyone. I can't judge. I haven't been at every firm, obviously. God, that would be horrendous. But I'd say in a lot of firms, my view would be that it's still the same. It's still that
get on with it.
Get on with it. This is your job, and we're not interested in how you get to it.
Is that for everyone in the industry, or for men more?
I think
I'd say it's for everybody.
Yeah, I'd say it's across the board.
I think women probably are. Sorry to interrupt. I'd say sometimes women are probably expected, or they put more pressure on themselves because they're trying to compete with men. And sometimes, women, they've got kids or they need breaks from work, but then they still want to get up that career ladder. So I think they might put themselves under more pressure, and the people in charge are discounting them almost because they're not there. They're working part time, and there is
in
that
and out of the office. Yeah, don't see how it's working, and don't see sometimes what family responsibilities some people have, because conveyancing isn't. If there's any one thing that anyone needs to know about conveyancing, it's not 9 till 5.
Yeah.
Where I've worked in places where what you said is entirely accurate. Where I work at the moment at Wilford Smith, it's really, they're really good. I think it depends on the setup there, by the way. Of getting it in there. Hi guys.
What makes it really good? When you say really good,
it's not the fact that they don't just say, "Here's your work, get on with it." I think wherever you work, there's going to be an element of that, because that's fundamentally what we're here for. But I think there comes a point, and I think anybody knows in conveyancing how fees work, you have to take on board a certain amount of work that at some point is probably going to become unmanageable. And when you're putting that on staff, where that has been the case, it's understood. And sort of, you're not pressed, because they understand the stresses that you're under. Yeah. Whereas some firms, like you say, it's a case of, we don't care that you've got 200 files. You need to get that done, and then this is where people's sort of pressure points start boiling. Yeah. And then you will be getting issues with things like mental health, and I think I think as well. Yeah. And I think it will affect, I think, obviously because there's more women in the industry, it's going to affect them more because they're taking home with them the stresses of work, and then having to combine that with stresses of just general family life. Obviously, that said, I'm not saying that everyone has a family,
of course.
or that men don't, but I think it differs from firm to firm, but I would say that in the main, it is a case of just crack on.
Yeah.
If you got to a point where, say there was a really difficult case, or say like a really difficult complaint came in and it really was getting to you, or you felt ridiculously stressed at work, or maybe to the point where you were like, my mental health is taking a hit here. Do you feel like you would be able to... where would you turn, actually? Or would you turn anywhere? Or would you keep it to yourself?
Keep it to myself.
Yeah, it depends. I mean, I went for it. So I was at a firm and I stressed, complete close to burnout. Started to get... my body was telling me that I was on the verge of burnout and everything. Like I got psoriasis and everything like that.
That's what happened.
And then one day I collapsed on the train.
Oh my goodness.
I know. Yeah. So that was going into Birmingham in rush hour. And that was down to stress and everything, yeah.
Isn't it funny though as well how the body, and this is it's a thing, isn't it? If you are on your way to burnout and you're internalising, not talking to anyone about it, not doing anything to...
But you didn't see, I didn't put it down to stress. I didn't realise it was stress.
Exactly.
But my body was for months before, until it happened, until I got rushed to hospital and they're like, this is what's going on.
So this
and
is
stuff
it.
Like that.
So you don't even recognise it because you just keep going and we keep going and we keep going.
And it's how you feel for... was it a case of how you felt for like a period of time and it just became normal?
Yeah, it was just, this is my job, this is what I've got to do, and I didn't feel anything different. But obviously, clearly, like I say, the body's telling you another thing and you're just trying to carry on, and then that happened and it wasn't good. So you try and implement new things in your own life, but to try and change it. But yeah, it wasn't a good time. That's because I didn't talk either at the time, because I didn't know I was going for it.
And it's
the job is the job.
Yeah.
And it's the same at any company. It's just how that company looks after you and how they react to you. And it was sort of, so I'd always known this is the job. I've always had this pressure. You've got a bill, you've got to do this, that. Yeah. And then
you've got a team to manage as well.
Exactly, yeah.
So you've got to think that you've got, say, however many, say if you've got 16 on a team and you've got 16 sort of men and women looking at you, and you've got it, and you're thinking, well, if they see me in a position of weakness, how is that going to affect them? So you have to, and again, I'd say that's probably the same with any man, whether you're male or female. But as a man, again, you just feel what you're putting across is going to have an effect on the people that you're meant to be sort of leading and in charge of. Yeah,
that's really interesting because there's two sides of the coin there. If you went through something like that, everyone naturally, you're going to have on one hand that fear of, oh my goodness, are my team then going to think that I can't cut, oh my goodness. Or actually, if you are open about that and then encourage your team to be like, look, don't get to this point.
Yeah.
Like, do you know what I mean?
I think that's had the effect on me. I'm much more open about it. I don't mind telling people. And it's like, I will try and look after my team now to make sure they don't get to that point.
Yeah.
Keep talking
that's
to me.
Exactly it.
I think I'd be the same, but I'd still sort of step sort of to the side with it and treat myself differently.
Yeah.
Whereas I'd say to them, this is how you should behave. If you've got this issue, come and see me.
Blah, blah, blah. I
feel that's probably how sort of I'd deal with it. And again, I have
the same. I'm telling people not to have their emails on when they're off, on holiday, or delete it off their apps or whatever. Or that we have the A day Aconveyancing where it's a day off in the week, 4-day working week. And I'm telling them, don't check your emails. We've got this covered. And then when I'm off, I'm like, just check that. And it is a case of do as I say, not as I do, and it's no good for me either. But sometimes I'm slowly getting better.
Kind of role dependent as well.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I'd cast it because I'm in charge of people and more senior. I need to just keep an eye on things. And if I'm sat at home watching Netflix on my day off, I've got 5 minutes to kill. I'll look at it. But if I'm out doing something, I won't. And that's something I've had to, and I'm getting better at it. But it's not a quick fix. This whole mental how stress, it's something you need to work on yourself over a period of time. And like I say, since I had that episode, I've had to go through different stages to get to where I am now as well. So.
I think working from home as well, I think that has sort of increased that working outside of hours thing.
Yeah.
Because when you're in your own environment and then you start working, when you're not working, there's sort of that inclination to just go back and just do a bit more day off. But and because you're thinking, I just want files off of my desk.
Yeah.
But then you're then letting that work creep come into your personal life, which again is a bit.
It's that work-life balance you just can't get right.
What can firms do, would you say then, to put those like boundaries in place and to really encourage that balance to avoid anyone going into burnout without even realising, and then their bodies being like, I'm going to slow you down if you don't slow down? Because that's really common, what you're talking about.
I think it's difficult what firms can do, because obviously there's a fine line between the business being profitable and cases. So
and how many staff they have,
and having staff. Yeah, I think so. You know, not having a high firms got to look at their staff and not give them loads of cases like we've just discussed. You know, to keep them at a more manageable level. Try and make the workplace a bit more open and, like, you know, management more approachable and a good environment to work in. Try and ensure that they get, my view is to have a proper work-life balance. You know, you finish work at 5 or, you know, whatever time it is, but switch off when you do go home and be with your family and stuff. There's loads more that I suppose needs to be done.
I think management being more approachable is definitely one.
Giving people access to sort of treatments as well, like, you know, have wellbeing meetings, or, you know, having access via, like, I don't know, we've got a what's it called, WPA we use, and it's sort of like we have therapies and stuff, so we can go and pay for like physiotherapy or psychological therapy and claim the money back and stuff like that. So that's what we, as a company, we offer to all of our staff. They all get it. So it's they can
plug there.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, but it's something that, you know, it's there for people, and we encourage all our staff to use it. But it's, like you say, approachability within the company. If it's not to management, if it's not to me, if you think I'm an ogre or you don't want to talk to me, fine. But as long as there's somebody there,
there's somebody as a go-to person that you know is accessible and isn't just behind a door, and you feel that, especially especially when you're new. Yeah. Whereas now, I wouldn't feel a way about going and knocking on one of the directors' doors and having a chat.
But when you first start,
you wouldn't dream of it.
Especially when you're coming from another firm where maybe you've been treated completely differently.
Are your directors male or female?
Mixture, actually. Okay. Yeah.
Would you chat to your male director if you felt?
I'd speak to either or. I'd feel comfortable enough to speak to either or, definitely.
And is that because of, like you say, because you're like part of the furniture now, you've been there a while, you feel comfortable?
No, this particular place, I've been there coming on 2 years.
Oh, okay.
And I think it's the personalities of the people that you're dealing with which predicates whether or not this is my word of the day. Cheers. Thanks, everybody. Whether or not you can approach them and speak to them.
Yes.
And for that, they're fantastic. I wouldn't feel, if I've done something wrong, which I know I'm going to get, well, you shouldn't have done that. But I'd still, despite that, I still feel that I could go and speak to them about whatever it was.
That's amazing. And again, like you say, it's like that personality thing, approachability, the empathy thing. And how would like the senior leaderships teams, how would they get that message across to your staff to be like, look, if you are going through something, it's okay?
By talking of their own account. I think telling somebody something like what you've just said,
drawing on your own experience.
If I just walked, so if I came onto your team and on day one you were talking to me about mental health, and then you were like, "This happened to me," I think once that happens, I'm like, "Yo, this guy's been through it," so I can go and talk to him, and there's something that I can he can relate to me. So I'd be more inclined to go and say something.
That's it, yeah. Management have got to be open and lead by example, you know, and ask everybody how they're feeling, what they're doing, and just offer the ears.
Do you have to, that does take, though, like we talked about at the start, that element of vulnerability, though, like when you are sharing, and whether it's with your team or even your mates, you do have to have, it is like an element of bravery, isn't it, and courage to be like, look, I'm going to share, like, this is how it was for me. So then for your mate or someone in your team to go, oh, the wall's down now. Oh, you get it.
I think and like, unless it's happened or something's happened to you, you think you're invincible and you don't need to talk or anything. And it's sort of once that...
And even while it's happening.
Yeah, while it's all going through it, and you still do. Even afterwards, for the short term afterwards, I was like, oh, it's fine, I'll be all right, I'll carry on. And you try and carry on, but something then hits and you're like, this isn't right, this isn't normal.
And there's times where sometimes you will do that and you'll be like, things will be fine. And then it is fine. So then you think that you can continue going through life, and then that is the case until one day something happens where you can't, and it's like hitting a brick wall, and then you don't know what to do. Who can you talk to? And then you feel again that you can't talk, and then it builds and builds, and then burnout.
And I always feel like for anyone in life as well, when a life event experience happens that you've never had to face before, you don't know how you're going to react. So you learn so much about yourself, and you might see a side of you that's like, what is going on? And then you've got to go into work, do your job, deal with all that stress. That's just life in general, isn't it? And I guess, like you said, it's with firms or any sort of job, company, if you're in a role that is super stressful, you're already up to here. And then when life happens on top of that, it's like...
You've got going to work in the morning and I've got a sublease.
Based on what we've just said, when it comes to then your conversations with your friends and that sort of side of things as well, do you think anything more could be done, or you could maybe act or react a little bit differently when it comes to like your mates and taking care of their mental health? Would you ask them more questions?
I think I do now anyway. I always try, and I won't just say, how are you? And if they say, oh yeah, I'm all right, and I'd leave it. Whereas before I'd be like, oh, okay, and I'll go on to another subject. Yeah. Now I'm finding myself,
if you know,
I'm drilling in, because you can
code,
you can sort of dig into them a little bit more, because you know your friends, you know they're like how they look, and you know if the body language is a bit off and stuff, and tone and everything, so you can try and draw down a bit. It's harder over the phone, but in person you can. So I would definitely say, especially with closer friends, I'm more persistent in trying to find out what's going on, or meeting up with them more regularly if I can. But
I'm awful for that.
That's really, and that's a really good little like nugget of advice for anyone, whether it's blokes or like if you've got a friend that just isn't a talker and maybe you have a concern, to actually see them in person and read between the lines of what they're not saying. Like you said, pick up on like body language. And this is good for like a management and leadership perspective as well. If you've got someone in your team that you're like, oh, they don't...
They're dead quiet. They keep themselves to themselves.
And to just like check in on them. Francis, Kevin, thank you so much. This has been such a good... I feel like we've had a proper like... It's a bit of more of like a raw chat. Going into, it's good to get an insight.
It's been good. I feel I've got to know you, man.
What is it for?
Romance. We'll pop some links, resources and stuff in the description of the podcast as well. But yeah, really, really appreciate it. And also for being open and opening up about stuff. I know it's much appreciated. Amazing. Well, thank you guys. We'll see you on the next one, hopefully.
Lovely. Cool.
Awesome. Thank you.